Hello, Joe Simhart here again for another edition of Cults in the Occulture. It's April 20th, 2022, and today I'm going to take a quick look at two interesting concepts. One is about the economy and politics, and I'll be reading from Nancy MacLean's 2017 book, Democracy in Chains. The Deep History of the Radical Right's Stealth Plan for America. A very interesting book. I just read it. And an older book, The Vedic Origins of Karma, and Cosmos as Man in Ancient Indian Myth and Ritual by Herman Tull. So what does economy have to do with karma? Well, they're interlinked in many ways, and we'll get into that toward the end. I found this cartoon by John Knott from 1918, and it's titled "It Shoots Further Than He Dreams," and it's really kind of a deal about karma. You know, he who takes up the sword will fall by the sword. So here's this picture of this militarist with a cannon. Hope you can see that. And he's standing on the globe and he shoots. And of course the bullet comes around and he gets nailed. Yeah, so it's an old concept that what we put out there is going to come back to us. And it comes from this idea of karma. Karma basically means action from the Sanskrit. And the idea is that any intent or any act, any thought, in fact, can create ripples in the cosmos and will create other actions. So there's a cause and effect to this. And it all somehow comes back to us. Now, us can mean anything, that we are God energies that will experience God energies going out into the cosmos because there's an eternal economy about everything that happens. Going back to the word economy, it comes from the Greek oikos, which essentially is talking about the family function. And so the entire idea of economy goes back to how a family functions. People have certain roles, they trade services, they have to survive, there's ways of managing survival, and this all creates an economy, and that extends into the tribe, of course, and into the nation, and today, globally. There is hardly any place on earth that's not affected by some kind of ripple effect. I mean, even in the depths of the Amazon jungle or up in the Himalayas, some remote tribe are affected these days by what we do in other places on the earth. Everything from affecting climate change to traveling and exploring how these ancient people live. Yeah, they're not alone. So, karma and the economy. The economy is at the core of MacLean's book, and she's looking at how the radical right, in the hands of powerful oligarchs and very powerful lobbyists with lots of money, have been manipulating politics in order to go back to something that was operative during the pre-Civil War days. And she's looking at, in her prologue, the title is The Marks of the Masterclass, and she's talking about John C. Calhoun, was vice president at one time and a politician in North Carolina. Richard Hofstadter, the historian, dubbed him the Marks of the Masterclass. And the reason was that Calhoun was able to manipulate the state laws and rules and institute laws where he said the federal government was not allowed to interfere with his use of property. Now, property back in those days obviously meant slaves, as well as the land. And you could also include women and children because they didn't have a right to vote, and they were used in ways which we don't do today. A lot of these same people that want to see the old ways come back today, are against the Equal Rights Amendment for women, and they call feminists feminazis and that kind of thing. So they hark back to this old time of John C. Calhoun. And what MacLean says here is appreciation for John C. Calhoun turns out to be not an aberration, but a recurrent theme in the brain trust the Kansas-based billionaire Charles Koch has, K-O-C-H, has funded over the years. What is so valuable to them in Calhoun's anti-democratic theorizing, notably in his disquisition on government and his long magnum opus, a discourse on the Constitution and government of the United States. And it's a question. One of the first scholars subsidized by Koch, the Austrian economist Murray Rothbard, and Austrian economics comes from this idea, spoke openly of the cause's debt to Calhoun, crediting his class analysis of taxation as foundational to the libertarian cause. Calhoun's insight, Rothbard explained, was that it was the intervention of the state that in itself created the classes and the conflict, not the labor relations of the economy as previous thinkers believed. Calhoun saw that some people in the community must be net payers of tax funds while others are net recipients. In today's parlance, makers and takers. By his theory, the net gainers of tax monies were the ruling class of the exploiters. The net losers of tax funds were the ruled or the exploited. So in other words, the majority, the working class, the slave class, or whatever, actually can dominate the minority, which is less than 1% of the people that run these businesses, the oligarchs. And he says, so most crucially, Calhoun and Rothbard inverted how most people would construe who had power over whom. A man whose wealth came from slavery was a victim of government tax collectors, and poorer voters were the exploiters to watch out for. Calhoun was right, Rothbard instructed, in focusing on taxes and fiscal policy as the keystone of democracy's threat to economic liberty. So it's the economic liberty of the ultra-wealthy that's at stake here. And to see how Calhoun's project unfolded in his day is better to understand the stealth plan for transformation underway in our own. And, you know, part of the argument in this book goes into the something called the Mont Pelerin Society, which originated in 1947, based on Hayek and Friedman's Austrian economic theories. And so John C. Calhoun's ideas still resonate through this modern current way of trying to manipulate the vote, manipulate how government runs, increasing what she calls the vetoing power of certain bodies of government, which other democracies don't have as much of. And so as a result, you know, we in this economy tend to freeze and not get a whole lot of things done as we should. And the idea behind the Mont Pelerin Institute was to create a culture war. So, and it's a non-stop culture war. So in other words, you know, if there's an immigrant problem, you have to magnify it and make it look really bad and awful, and you know, cause the other party to have to scramble to somehow make the immigrant problem not so bad, and that, yeah, we are big enough to accommodate more people, you know. So the argument goes back and forth, and it gets very difficult to pass laws and to change things in order to come to a reasonable balance on how to handle immigration, because there's such what Marx called the exaggeration of the opposites, which is what will cause revolution and change in a nation. Of course, the problem here is that if you have a revolution that's too rapid, you usually end up with authoritarian governments, because there isn't enough time to balance out the way power is used, and in order to control the society, you end up controlling the military, which is putting its thumb on how people are behaving and so forth. And again, the wealthy tend to control that, and by doing that, they can manage the wealth better, and the wealth flows up to the top. You know the old story. So back to karma. When I was studying theosophy back in the day, and in the New Age movement, there was this idea that your individual karma is the most important, not collective karma or some other kind of cosmic karma, but that you individually put something out there and it will come back to you. So the idea is to create good karma so that you can break the wheel of rebirth or ascend or whatever. But there came this idea, and it's similar to far right-wing economy, that you shouldn't interfere with other people's karma. The idea is that if you gained a lot of money, an enormous amount of money based on luck and good business practice, and your workers aren't making a whole lot, well, that's just their karma, and you have a right to it because sort of God ordained that you have this blessing of money, and you can manage it any way you want. You have that, quote, freedom, unquote. So if the little guy has the same opportunity, if he struggles really hard, he can also make a lot of money in this particular kind of economy. Of course, that's not always true. In fact, it's not true for most people. The Theosophists dealt with this in the sense of karma, and this question comes up of no interference with karma. For instance, the Ramtha group that I had studied quite a bit, it still exists, run by J.Z. Knight. A lot of the members back in the 80s were saying things like that murderers shouldn't be thrown in jail because, they probably did a favor to the person that they murdered, because the person that they murdered had that karma coming to them because they were probably murderers in a past life, and we shouldn't put murderers in jail because karma will work out their destiny anyway. So it's a very simplistic way to look at it. Annie Besant, who was the second leader after Madame Blavatsky and Colonel Olcott of the Theosophical Society, had an answer to this because she was saying that a common question is, since all suffering comes from karma, whether a person should try to help others in the relief of it. And she said, you need not be troubled about karma any more than by the law of gravitation. You cannot interfere with it. This is a point that all who are beginning to read theosophical books ought to realize very clearly. Sometimes you find an ill-trained theosophist who says, I must not help so-and-so, it is his karma to suffer. You might as well say you will not pick up a child that has fallen because by the law of gravitation it has fallen and must be left under its law to take care of itself. Your duty is to do all you can to help others. If you cannot help them, their karma will take you out of their road. So karma still is some kind of a force that will take care of things. Anyway, she says, do not take karma as an excuse for indolence, as I am sorry to say many people do. So, in this alt-right wing economy, Mont Pelerin Society comes up with this idea that, things are the way they are because of evolution, because of social Darwinism, the survival of the fittest. It has nothing to do with sharing and all of this, because sharing the wealth leads to socialism, which leads to communism, which leads to Leninism, and that whole line keeps coming up. What's interesting, the reason that Calhoun was called the Marx of the master class, a lot of these same people from the alt-right economies use Lenin's idea of cadres and this way of influencing government and society in order to make the change which came to communist totalism. They actually use his techniques, and they talk about them in their secret meetings back in the 40s and 50s on how to implement Leninist ways of working the economy in order to get an alt-right or an Austrian economic view of the world to operate, thus again keeping wealth among the wealthy. Yeah, so you might want to take a look at MacLean's book, Democracy in Chains. There are ways of creating a humane economy. For instance, Seattle Times ran this article in 2016, Karma Tastes Rich in the New Humane Economy. And one of the things they say here is that in terms of this new good karma economy, consumers as well as companies seem to be catching on. SeaWorld stock bounced more than 15% immediately after its policy announcement that they wouldn't be using whales, the killer whales, in their shows. And Google tried to buy plant-based burger company Impossible Foods in 2015 for more than $200 million. So human virtue, it seems, can be profitable and delicious too. In other words, it wasn't a bad idea to go against the meat cults, supposedly in the fast food industry, and you can make a plant-based burger and make money on it. So anyway, I'm going to stop there. It's an interesting topic to delve into. So take a look at the economy and karma, and I think you'll learn a few things. Thank you.